voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Congressman, you've got until tomorrow. Do you think a deal is going to come?
It has to. I mean, the fact that we passed legislation out of the House 2.5 months ago, and that we're still waiting here while you've got people, you saw those unemployment numbers, 16% in New Jersey unemployed, families are hurting, small businesses are hurting. We've got to get this done, Stephanie.
What's the number one thing that needs to be in this relief bill?
Well, for me, the state and local dollars are key because we've got a $20 billion hole and a lot of our local communities can't afford to pay teachers and firefighters. Huge problem. And then the unemployment insurance is a very big challenge. You've got people now with no additional support, families that are struggling, getting calls, but they don't know how they're going to pay their bills, their rent, put food on the table. And a lot of small businesses called yesterday and said, I need help. I'm going to have to close the doors. And restaurants are saying to me, what happens when it gets cold in the beginning of September or end of September, and we can't have anybody come to our restaurants? What are we going to do then? So we've got to solve this problem now, and it's absurd, frankly, that we haven't gotten this done.
Congressman, stay with me because I want to talk about another thing that has you and a number of your colleagues concerned at the very least this morning. Listen up. Last week, the Trump administration announced a $765 million loan to keep Kodak, remember that company, Kodak, the photography company, to help them pivot to making chemicals for pharmaceuticals, something they have absolutely no expertise in. Well, the news of this deal, guess what happened? Kodak's stock price shot up from $2 a share to $60 a share, with the company's CEO and a group of insiders making hundreds of millions of dollars. I want to bring in NBC's Jonathan Swan. He has been digging into covering this story along with me. Jonathan Allen, walk us through exactly what happened here and why people are so concerned.
There's really this uncanny series of events, Steph, as you well know, because you've been digging into this with me. Basically, in December, you saw a lot of people, a very small set of people, gather a lot of Kodak stock, some insiders, a member of the board. A few of them are actually family members. Then in May, you saw President Trump empower a foreign development aid agency called the US Agency for Development Finance Corporation. Basically invert them and say you don't have to do aid in foreign countries anymore. Now you can do aid to U.S. domestic companies. And they're making this, they announced a $765 million loan, or at least intent for that loan, to Kodak. That boosts the stock. And then all of a sudden you see some of these folks who have bought all these shares starting to dump their shares as the stock goes through the roof. And then in the middle of that, and this is complicated financial stuff, but there's a convertible bond that goes into play, flooding the market with Kodak stock and making it much less valuable for some of the other people that were buying while it was on its run. And so what you see here is a very, very small group of people making a ton of money off a Trump administration announcement that was only made possible by an executive order from the president allowing this tiny agency to start making loans in this country rather than to do clean water projects in developing countries.
Congressman, to the naked eye, this looks like a pump and dump stock scheme created by the U.S. government. We have all sorts of pharmaceutical companies here. Why wouldn't the government offer a deal like this to one of them? Kodak is a company where the insiders, the company, even in the last few months, was guiding investors saying they didn't think they were going to be doing so well in the days, months, years ahead. And then boom, they get a deal like this out of nowhere.
You're right. This company's supposed to make Polaroids not Stephanie. I don't understand. What I don't get is there's a 25% pop in the stock, the day before this announcement, this loan is made. All the CEO and chairman gets a sweetheart deal on all these options, and then suddenly the stock runs. You're giving it to a company with all these companies that make, there are life sciences companies that make generic drugs and the chemicals for them every single day, and then we give it to the Polaroid company that makes chemicals for photography, and they're bankrupt. Nothing about this is right, and I think we've got to get to the bottom of it. And not only should people be held accountable for this, is what we called for, but frankly, we got to get the money back. That's the obvious thing we've got to do here, and it's what we're calling for.
It is Friday, the 7th of August of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is, of course, our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Oh, yes, it is a liquid lunch day. Indeed. The French 77, I must say, are all poured. It's all poured, ready for your virtual imbibing pleasure, but do take care. Even in the virtual world, the French 77 is a very potent spirit. Well, speaking of potent spirits, looks like Joe Biden is more powerful than God. He hurt God! How is that possible? Well, it's possible if a blasphemous libertine says it. Yeah, we're talking about Donald Trump telling his white evangelical base that Joe Biden hates the Bible, he hates God, he has no religion. I mean, this is from a guy who never goes to church. And Joe Biden is a devout Catholic. Typical. It's the typical right-wing ignorance, the typical right-wing lack of moral structure and clarity. It appeals to them. They actually, Trump and they, his basket of deplorables, actually believe that Joe Biden has no religion. That Joe Biden hates the Bible. That Joe Biden hurt God. I'm still trying to figure out if God is omnipotent, omnipresent, and all the omnis you can come up with, because God is God. How can Joe Biden be more powerful than that? It just doesn't make sense. It's blasphemy. Which just goes to show that the white evangelical base, they're really a bunch of, heretics, aren't they? They don't even recognize blasphemy within their own religious construct, because their cultic divinity, the divine presence of one Donald J. Trump, looks like he's much more powerful than God. Well, there's no use sitting around trying to figure out the intellectual understanding of the non-intellectual anti-intellectuals. The anti-intellectual streak in this country has gotten much stronger. I mean, it's been around forever. Mostly contained within the toxic third, but Pac-Man brought up this stat that almost half of the U.S. population just doesn't believe the science, whatever the science is. So that's a little bit more than the toxic third, isn't it? Wow. So, I know you could say that it's not endemic and restricted to only the right wing in terms of anti-science and some anti-intellectual behaviors. I know that. There are anti-vaxxers on the left side of the spectrum. But I would hope that those are really minor numbers. I would hope that people on our side, by and large, use much more critical thinking skills that would disallow the idea of falling into the conspiracy theory trap. They project all the time, of course, They say there will be voter fraud and mail-in ballots because that's what they do. They would say that the Democrats would try to profit off of a pandemic because that's what they're doing right now. They say we're socialists because they capitalize all the good things and they socialize everything that gets bad. Oh, yeah, we effed up. Well, we're going to have to share the blame on this. Uh-huh. So, there's that. And then you got Trump just making an executive order. I mean, so much for small government, and business being able to live within the magic of the marketplace. Trump signed an executive order to get rid of TikTok. We're in a TikTok countdown with the pandemic. 2,000 people dying in 24 hours. Haven't had that number of people dying in a 24-hour period since April. But if you talk to the people in Rogue River, Oregon, this pandemic is a total hoax, and anybody who believes in it just doesn't know how to think. They know the truth. They have Q on their side, and we have Dr. Fauci. They have demon semen lizard aliens from outer space causing all the problems, and we have Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci is trying to destroy the world because he's been working as a leading health professional for how many decades? 3, 4 decades more? And these anti-vaxxers read something from some discounted, well, they didn't read even, they saw it on YouTube, a completely discredited study about vaccines. But Dr. Fauci is the one who is the evil one because he's trying to save people. Our Democratic governor here in Oregon is a jackboot fascist because she wants to keep people healthy. And then they look at low numbers, relatively low numbers, the success of having a lockdown and by and large people wearing masks. They look at that success in their minds is proof that it's all a hoax. We're not getting any problems here in Rogue River. Why do we have to follow the rules? And these are the same people who mustered in the town square in the entryway to our town from the off-ramp on the I-5 freeway because they were afraid that busloads of microscopic Antifa and Black Lives Matter was going to come to Rogue River and destroy all of us white people. They had 30 people waiting for these busloads of Antifa. And I'm supposed to be the one who is incapable of new thinking. Yeah, damn right. I'm not thinking new like that. I'm sorry. It's not as if I was imbued with critical thinking skills. It's something that you get trained in, actually. So, of course, all of these arguments here locally are taking place on our local Facebook town page, and I haven't been suspended yet, but I still expect to be. Because every time that you stand up and use government data from government agencies, Facebook says that is harassment. And yet, once again, I'll just keep repeating it, veiled threats of physical violence, homophobic memes being generated and posted against the liberals and me in particular, all of those are considered not violations of terms of service, terms of use at Facebook. But correct disinformation either about elections or the pandemic, and you get suspended by Facebook for harassment or some other dubious aspect that the right wing has been able to game the algorithm to promote and push their agenda. So I haven't been suspended yet. I expect it. Over 200 people at a local bar, a music bar, spilling out onto the roadway. As I mentioned yesterday, taking their alcoholic beverages off the premises and spilling out on a roadway, a well-traveled roadway, is enough to have your liquor license pulled for that. But they were brought there because this bar, Jammin' Salmon, it's made all the news here in the state and around the country, and I've seen it overseas too. Our little town of Rogue River has made the international news because of this hoax, they say here in town. I wonder how many people have suffered here in town. I wonder how many people have suffered, say, the ravages of a particular kind of cancer. How many? Numbers might be low. Do we just ignore it? The ghoulishness, the selfishness of these people. It hasn't happened to me, so I don't care. And then they have the audacity to say that anybody who's actually trying to help another person is a socialist commie and they should leave the country. I don't know. Yeah, I made a stupid joke. I said, can't we just round up all these people and, send them to Idaho? If they don't want to follow law and order, send them to Idaho. I know there's people in Idaho who are good, liberal people, and they don't need that. I know. But there's just no direct flights to send them somewhere into the outskirts of Moscow in Russia, not Idaho. Okay? So the outskirts of Moscow, Idaho will have to do until we get them to the real Moscow. Okay? They'll love it there. It's white as white can be. And it looks like Vlad has a pretty good hand on locking down his dissent, or the dissent against him. Yeah, there's vast protests against this guy, but he's pretty heavy-handed in how he deals with it, and I think that would fit just perfectly fine with the deplorables who cannot stand America, and most important, they cannot stand Americans. I never agreed with the America love it or leave it attitude. But if you hate it so much, you don't have to love it. But if you hate it so much, well, maybe it is time to move, isn't it? Yeah, I've been threatened with a blacklist in the town square, in businesses in town. I've been threatened with being exposed as the fraud if anybody physically sees me in town, whatever that means. Now, of course, you can't respond and say, oh, yeah, I'll meet you in town, because then you'll be suspended for making a threat. But when a right-winger makes a threat and makes you well aware that they are armed, apparently that's not a violation of service on Facebook still. I don't get it. Well, I do. Because if you think Cambridge Analytica and Facebook are not in cahoots with each other again, you've got maybe I've got a bridge in New York to sell you. Speaking of which, Manhattan had a blackout. Probably still does, and lots of New York is still suffering a blackout. I think I'm in a bubble right now, but they don't have electricity. Wow. Yeah, well, America is so great, We're doing so well. Jobs report came out, 1.8 million. Yeah, a marked drop in what was expected. And even those numbers, I think, are being gamed. The United States is buying up stock and whatever, mutual funds and everything, and propping up the stock market. It's the most crazy mob aspect of what's going on now. Whoa. And you got the Schlaps, Mercedes, and that weird guy that she's married to out there, just, yeah, everything's fine, and Trump is God, and Nancy Pelosi is an evil witch. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? It's Friday. Okay, we made it, and now we have to gird ourselves for a very, very busy weekend. The Kodak deal is a pump and dump stock scheme created by the U.S. government. Yeah, there's going to be some criminality coming out of that. Oh, I have to mention the fact that the NRA has been indicted and will be dissolved, even though everybody says, oh, they're not going to be dissolved. You're not going to take my guns away. It's so weird. These nuts think that if you dissolve the NRA, you've dissolved the Second Amendment. The NRA is not the Second Amendment. The NRA is a grift operation, non-profit, spent $20 million on yachts? Come on. But I guess the members there, they're being grifted, and they love being grifted, and the grifters always hate the marks. And it's being played out with the NRA right now. Of course, the NRA is coming out with their statement saying, oh, we're being attacked because we're the Second Amendment. You are not the Second Amendment. Jeez. But that's the level of intellectual capacity from the basket of deplorables. The heck, if they're going to send their kids infected with measles to school, do you think that they care about sending their kids with COVID to school? Of course not. Or any of the other ridiculous aspects of what the basket of deplorables will accept. A Maryland County health official defied GOP Governor Larry Hogan's order to keep schools closed. The head of the Federal Election Commission called on McConnell to fund this election now to avoid devastating failure. Of course, McDonald says that's what we want. And lawmakers from both parties are calling on the US Postal Service to immediately reverse operational changes that are causing delays. Yeah, some deplorables are not getting their meds on time. Finally, they're figuring it out. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the Mekong River Commission urged China and other Southeast Asian countries to share more data on dam operations as water flow hit record low levels. And an ex-Saudi intel official alleged Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman sent a hit squad to kill him. But Canadian authorities thwarted the effort. Do not get in the face of a Mountie. Just don't. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Link. And though if Manhattan is still in a blackout, I don't know if she's able to monitor at this very moment. But she does, and we thank Kelly for doing that and so much more. If you would then look to the leftish from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the link to our Patreon page. And if you could afford the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds our way, we will pay our bills and fly under the radar to resist as the founders originally intended. So thank you for your generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, do so at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary about 10 minutes before showtime. Post that up on social media so you can get to those show notes and links on the diary at Daily Goes. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, iTunes, iHeart, etc., wherever you can find them. Podcasts are everywhere now. They're ubiquitous, aren't they? Indeed. Oh, as a little aside, Oprah Winfrey has bought up a couple of dozen billboards to place around Louisville, calling for the arrest of the cops who killed Breonna Taylor. You know, in that no-knock warrant, and it wasn't even her house that they were supposed to be knocking on the door, but they killed her, you know, in the dead of night, because that's why they call it the dead of night. And so these billboards are being funded by Oprah Winfrey, and Ted Cruz calls it racist. Okay. And I'm told repeatedly that systemic racism doesn't exist in America. Really? Well, I guess that's proof right there. All right, let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Dan Desai-Martin of the American Independent brings us this offering. A Montgomery County, Maryland health official defied Governor Larry Hogan's emergency order banning local health officials in the state from mandating school closing by declaring that non-public schools in his county must remain closed to in-person instruction at least through October 1st. In his health officer directive and order regarding non-public schools, Dr. Travis Gales, Montgomery County's Chief of Public Health Services, wrote that the current surveillance and epidemiological data do not support the safe reopening of schools for in-person instruction in any capacity in Montgomery County. Gale's previous order requiring all private and religious schools in the county to remain closed, issued on July 31st, was overruled by Hogan on Monday of this week. Hogan amended a statewide emergency order to prohibit local health officials from making broad decisions on school closures. The blanket closure mandate imposed by Montgomery County was overly broad and inconsistent with the powers intended to be delegated to the county health officer. Hogan said in a statement, take a survey of the parents instead of the experts. Do what the parents want. I think actually a lot of parents don't want it. Here in Rogue River, Oregon, that was the excuse by our superintendent of schools. They took a survey of the parents. The parents said, hey, we're all a bunch of anti-vaxxers anyway. Put these kids back in school. Do you know how much underfoot they are? We can't snort our meth around these kids. So instead of speaking with the experts, speak with the parents. And in some municipalities and little villages, the parents just can't stand having their kids around underfoot all this time. It's really impeding upon their daily activities when the kids are gone. One thing that has been lost in this conversation, and it is a little frustrating, is that the purpose behind what we're doing is to keep kids safe, to keep staff members safe, and family members at home safe, Gale said at a press briefing shortly before he issued the new order. Maryland experienced statewide increases in the number of new coronavirus cases over the summer after Hogan allowed businesses to reopen. On July 20th, health officials from several counties, including Montgomery, urged Hogan to take action to curb these trends, including revisiting the activities allowed under his executive orders. In response, Hogan's spokesperson said the governor was prepared to take action, but blamed the rising number of cases on a small segment of bad actors. Oh, you mean they're going to blame Antifa and the socialist conspiracy to take over America? Desai-Martin of the American Independent brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Federal Election Commissioner Ellen Weintraub called on Trump and Congress to provide adequate funding for the 2020 election in a sharply worded public statement released yesterday, Thursday. Mr. President, members of Congress, should you fail to provide the funds America needs for its elections, you will be derelict in your duty to your country, Weintraub wrote. A lack of federal funding, she said, would be a devastating failure to protect our democracy in a moment of historic need. And Mitch McConnell's going, damn right. The nation's top election official emphasized that money was needed soon so states can keep in-person voting safe and can process all the ballots America's voters will mail in adding that after a year filled with a pandemic and economic turmoil, the last thing America needs is to end the year with an electoral crisis. And both Trump and Mitch McConnell are going, what? That's exactly what we're looking for. In May, the House of Representatives passed a coronavirus relief bill that included $3.6 billion for states to prepare for the upcoming election, which included funding for election security. The bill also included $25 billion for the US Postal Service, which will play a critical role in delivering ballots during the election. Well, of course, the U.S. Postal Service has been in existence since before the Constitution was ratified, so we got to get rid of it. For months after the House vote, Senate Majority Leader Moscow Mitch McConnell, the Grim Reaper of the graveyard of the Senate where democracy goes to die, refused to bring up that bill for a vote, negotiate with House leaders, or pass a separate coronavirus relief bill through the Republican-controlled Senate. When McConnell released a relief package on the 27th of July, the bill contained no money at all to help prepare for the 2020 election. Federal funding for safe elections can make sure we avoid a democracy crisis. In November, Michael Waldman, president of the Brennan Center for Justice, said in May, time matters. Officials can't just walk into a Staples in November and pick up the necessary equipment. They face ordering and purchasing deadlines that started this month, and that was in May. Weintraub's statement was released as the White House and Democratic leaders are negotiating the terms of a coronavirus relief package. Details of any potential deal have not emerged except for Meadows slamming his hand on the table and slamming his hands right across the face of American children and across the faces of all the parents of those children who vote. Final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by anonymous worker bees at Reuters. And why wouldn't you be anonymous in this story? If you happen to be reporting on a story like this, you might be put on a hit list. You got to be careful. A former top-ranking Saudi intelligence official living in exile in Canada alleged in a lawsuit filed in a U.S. court that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman sent a team to kill him in 2018, but the effort was foiled by Canadian authorities. Saad al-Jabri was a longtime aide to Prince Mohammed bin Nayef. The Crown Prince, known as MBS, ousted Nayef as heir to the throne in a 2017 palace coup that left him the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, a close U.S. ally. So close, they hired all of the terrorists to bring down the World Trade Center and fly into the Pentagon. And some passengers spot a bunch of them on one flight and crashed it into a field in the middle of America. People with knowledge of the situation told Reuters earlier this year that Jabri has access to documents containing sensitive information that MBS fears could be compromising. Well, I bet Jared does too. In a 107-page lawsuit against MBS and 24 others filed in federal court in the District of Columbia, Jabri said the Crown Prince dispatched a hit squad to Canada in October of 2018. A team of Saudi nationals traveled across the Atlantic Ocean from Saudi Arabia with the intention of killing Dr. Saad, said the lawsuit, which seeks punitive damages in an amount to be determined at trial. The Saudi government media office did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The embassy in Ottawa was not immediately available for comment. Now, the hit squad was comprised of members of a group close to MBS called the Tiger Squad, and they carried 2 bags of forensic tools, to dismember with, and included someone who knew how to clean up crime scenes. Mr. Wolf! The man attempted to enter Canada covertly, traveling on tourist visas and pretending not to know each other. Suspicious border agents found a photo showing several of the men together, revealing their lie and thwarting their mission, the lawsuit said. The incident took place less than 2 weeks after Saudi agents murdered journalist Jamal Khashoggi in the kingdom's Istanbul consulate. Turkish sources told Reuters a bone saw was used to dismember the journalist, part of the forensic tools of the Tiger Squad in Canada. Well, that brings us to our break, and we better get to our break. And when we come back, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Hank's back at the helm. A trend has been emerging over the years with respect to Tom Hanks' heroes. None are ever anointed or have special powers or are answering a call of destiny. They are, rather, average men rising to an occasion. Think Chesley Sullenberger, the hero pilot in Sully, or his portrayal of Captain Phillips dealing with Somali pirates. The new World War II action film Greyhound finds Hanks back on the high seas portraying Commander Ernest Krause in a Hanks-written screenplay from C.S. Forster's 1955 novel The Good Shepherd. Set in the under-remembered Battle of the Atlantic, where more Allied service people died than on D-Day and its immediate aftermath, Commander Krause is embarking on his first wartime command, escorting a convoy of merchant ships from the U.S. to Liverpool through a gauntlet of German U-boats in the North Atlantic. The film's action occurs in what the crew calls the Black Pit, an approximately 3-day stretch of ocean travel where the ships are out of range of land-based air cover. And action is what we get. Though there's less than 90 minutes of it is riveting as the convoy, not always successfully, plays cat and mouse with the U-boats. From the action emerges an understated character study of Commander Krause, who remains awake and on duty through the whole ordeal. We see him call for his slippers after his Navy-issued shoes turn his feet bloody. We see him take time to say grace before snacks, even under near-battle conditions. Despite at least a couple of familiar faces amongst the crew, though, director Aaron Schneider gives us no backstory on their characters, which feels more like a decision than an oversight. That decision, clearly, being to keep Greyhound a stark white-knuckle ride, during which a good man answers the call of duty. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Memory loss and forgetfulness are common warning signs for dementia, but a dulling of the senses also appears to be associated with the disease.
Smell is definitely the strongest one we found, but it does seem like it's not just smell.
Willa Brenowitz, an epidemiologist at the University of California, San Francisco. Her team studied cognitive decline in 1,800 adults from the Health, Aging, and Body Composition Study, which tracked the health and mental function of older adults over a 17-year period. During the study, the subjects completed sensory tests, including hearing, smell, touch, and vision. Brenowitz's team took the results of those tests and then compared the adults' overall sensory abilities to their mental function, and the results
Those with better function had a lower risk of dementia, and with worse multiple sensory function, they had higher risk of dementia.
A decline in smell in particular had the strongest link to dementia. The results are in the Journal of the Alzheimer's Association, Alzheimer's and Dementia. The scientists were just studying correlations here, but Brenowitz says if they can figure out how well multisensory decline predicts dementia risk, it might give doctors another tool to screen for the disease. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Should we fear Donald Trump's trumpeting the idea of postponing November's election? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. In a July 31st tweet, Donald Trump, after declaring that the 2020 election would be extraordinarily inaccurate and fraudulent, floated the idea of postponing the election until people can, quote, securely and safely vote, end quote, presumably in person, after the danger from COVID-19 has passed, sometime in the indefinite future, presumably with him remaining in power. The proposal is preposterous and will gain no traction because a president has no constitutional or statutory power to postpone an election or to remain in power after his term ends. None. Zero. But there was a second part and purpose of the tweet, to lambaste voting by mail, which will be used by states more often in 2020. 5 states, prior to COVID-19, used voting by mail exclusively for their elections, including heavily and reliably Republican Utah. What's dangerous here is Trump's attempt to undermine the electoral process and our faith in it. Combine that effort along with his recent refusal to answer Fox News reporter Chris Wallace's question, would he accept the results of the election if he lost? That's scary. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. This day in labor history, the year was 1890. That was the day that one of the heroines of the U.S. labor movement, Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, was born in Concord, New Hampshire. Elizabeth learned her progressive politics at a young age. Her father was a socialist and her mother a feminist. Elizabeth was kicked out of high school for speaking out in favor of socialism. This did not slow her down. She kept speaking and her reputation grew. She became a member of the Industrial Workers of the World. She traveled the country organizing and speaking to workers. From the Minnesota Iron Range to the textile mills of Lawrence, Massachusetts, Elizabeth was on the front lines of the labor struggle. She was arrested for her activity 10 times, but was never sentenced. During World War I, Flynn was arrested and stood trial for speaking out against the war. The experience led her to become one of the founders of the American Civil Liberties Union, an organization dedicated to protecting freedom of speech. In the 1930s, Flynn became a member of the U.S. Communist Party, writing a regular column for the Daily Worker. But despite her personal political ideas, she supported Democratic Party President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1944. During the 1950s, she was caught up in the anti-communist hysteria led by Senator Joe McCarthy. She went to prison for 2 years for allegedly violating the Smith Act, a law against overthrowing the government. She died while on a visit to Russia in 1964. More than 20,000 people attended her funeral there. A monument to Flynn stands at the Forest Home Cemetery just outside of Chicago, where she is buried alongside the graves of Eugene Dennis, Big Bill Haywood, and the Haymarket Martyrs. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
The Bureau of Labor Statistics Friday morning released the July jobs report. The U.S. economy added 1.8 million jobs, bringing the unemployment rate down to 10.2%. Though the White House will try to spin this as a positive, keep in mind that more than 30 million Americans remain unemployed, the unemployment rate is still over 10%, and Congress is getting nowhere fast on a new coronavirus relief package. A 3-hour meeting Thursday night ended without resolving any major differences, despite looming economic damage following the expiration of extra jobless benefits of $600 a week. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, negotiating for the Republicans, said the two sides remained, quote, very far apart. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi said they're disappointed, but reminded us that they passed a $3 trillion relief bill, the HEROES Act, in May. But the Republicans haven't acted on it or anything since. Trump has threatened to take executive action on his own economic stimulus, which includes a payroll tax cut, something neither side wants, if the two sides don't reach a deal on Friday. Meanwhile, more than 19 million cases of coronavirus have now been recorded worldwide. The U.S. is closing in on 5 million cases, and a new model predicts that the death toll here could reach 300,000 by December. It now stands at about 160,000 deaths. So we waited on Thursday morning for the big announcement from New York Attorney General Letitia James.
Just a few minutes ago, my office filed a lawsuit against the National Rifle Association to dissolve the organization in its entirety for years of self-dealing and illegal conduct that violate New York's charities law and undermine its own mission.
Yep. On Thursday morning, the New York Attorney General announced that she's filed a lawsuit alleging that the National Rifle Association is fraught with fraud and abuse and is seeking to dissolve the organization in its entirety for years of self-dealing and illegal conduct. James said that her office's 18-month investigation found that the leaders of the organization diverted millions of dollars into their own pockets. She described Executive Vice President Wayne LaPierre as the, quote, central figure, accusing him and 3 others of breaking numerous laws, leading to the loss of $64 million over just 3 years. The Attorney General of Washington, D.C. on Thursday also announced a lawsuit against the NRA Foundation for alleged misuse of charitable funds. Donald Trump late Thursday made good on his promise, or was it a threat? He issued executive orders banning U.S. companies and individuals from doing business with the Chinese parent companies of the video sharing app TikTok and the messaging app WeChat. The bans are supposed to take effect in 45 days, although Trump's orders included no details. China's foreign ministry said the orders violated the rights of Chinese businesses. So, Donald Trump traveled to Ohio Thursday, ostensibly to tour a Whirlpool plant and talk about energy. As he planned to meet the president for a media event on the tarmac, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine tested positive for the coronavirus. Everyone who comes in contact with the orange one is tested. So instead of meeting with the president on Thursday, DeWine went and had another test performed. This one came back negative. So he'll undergo a third test this weekend. Better to be safe than sorry. Now, although Governor DeWine didn't join Trump on the tarmac at the airport, Trump still managed to make news. This was presented as an official White House visit where policy is discussed. But Trump again broke the rules to be hyper-political. As usual, he made stuff up. But this one seemed a step over the line, even for this orange blowhard.
He's following the radical left agenda. Take away your guns, destroy your Second Amendment, no religion, no anything, hurt the Bible, hurt God. He's against God, he's against guns, he's against energy, our kind of energy. I don't think he's going to do too well in Ohio.
Just wow. So a group of retailers, e-commerce, and logistics companies, including Amazon, CVS, and others, under the name The Package Coalition, is launching a $2.3 million ad campaign supporting emergency relief funding for the US Postal Service. The broadcast, cable, and radio spots will urge senators in Florida, Iowa, Missouri, Nebraska, North Carolina, Utah, and West Virginia to support the Postal Service Emergency Assistance Act. Lebanese authorities on Thursday arrested 16 people over the massive explosion at Beirut's port that killed, at latest count, at least 137 people. A day earlier, the government had placed port officials under house arrest pending the results of an investigation into why 2,750 tons of highly explosive ammonium nitrate had been stored in warehouses with no safety mechanisms. Human Rights Watch urged Lebanese authorities to let international experts conduct an independent investigation. There's mounting evidence that officials knew ammonium nitrate was stored at the port, but did nothing about it. Congressman Ted Lieu and Kathleen Rice have asked the FBI to open a criminal investigation into reports that Ambassador Woody Johnson pushed the UK to move the lucrative British Open to Donald Trump's Scotland golf course, and did so at Trump's request. This one's not going away, folks. And here's news that I don't like to share, coming to you from South Florida. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, on Thursday adjusted its seasonal forecast, now predicting a far above average 19 to 25 named storms, 7 to 11 of them to become hurricanes, and 3 to 6 of those to become major hurricanes with winds of at least 111 miles per hour. And finally, the last fully intact ice shelf in the Canadian Arctic has collapsed, losing more than 40% of its area in just 2 days at the end of July. The Milne ice shelf is on the edge of Ellesmere Island in the northern Canadian territory of Nunavut. The Canadian Ice Service said above normal air temperatures, offshore winds, and open water in front of the ice shelf are all part of the recipe for ice shelf breakup. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 58 degrees Fahrenheit, plentiful sunshine today with a high near 85 to 87. Clear skies tonight with winds out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Lows in the will be in the low 60s. Mainly sunny tomorrow with winds out of the north picking up to 10 to 15 miles per hour with highs in the upper 80s. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County of Southern Oregon have now spiked to 437 with one reported deceased. Grass pollen is moderate outside the mothership, and the air quality index for the region is good at 29 parts per million. Daytime UV index is very high at 8. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.1 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles. And relative humidity is at 90%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 96 and sunny. Paris is 97 and sunny. Rome is 88 and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 88 and fair. Kabul is 88 and fair. Hong Kong is 80 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 81 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 55 and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York is 74 degrees, partly cloudy, and probably still under a blackout. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Intercontinental Governmental Mekong River Commission urged China and Southeast Asian countries to share more data on hydropower dam operations as water flow in the Mekong hit record low levels for a second consecutive year. A report by the Commission attributes the low water level to 2 years of reduced rainfall and the operations of 13 Mekong hydro dams, 2 in Laos and 11 in China, as well as dams on Mekong tributaries in Laos. The Mekong also flows through parts of Myanmar. The report said the low flow could have severe impacts on communities in its member countries of Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and Vietnam due to loss of fisheries and irrigation potential.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mais automne, quand les feuilles tombent partout, si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Of course, I put everything in terrible order, so we'll finish up with the Postal Service story here with both parties saying, hey, you better immediately reverse those operational changes that are causing delays in deliveries. And this is out of the Associated Press by Matthew Daly. Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said that changes imposed by the new Republican Postmaster General threaten the timely delivery of mail, including medicines for seniors, paychecks for workers, and absentee ballots for voters that is essential to millions of Americans. In separate letters, 2 Montana Republicans, Steve Daines and Representative Greg Gianforte, you know that wrestler guy that slammed a reporter on the ground the night he won, also urged the Postal Service to reverse the July directive, which eliminates overtime for hundreds of thousands of postal workers and mandates that mail be kept until the next day if distribution centers are running late. And 84 House members, including 4 Republicans, signed yet another letter blasting the changes and urging an immediate reversal. Well, good. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. And boy, we're going to get that French 77 to give us an excuse for messing up the order of our stories. So do stay tuned all day and all week. Oh, of course, we're going to meet up on Monday for River City Hash Monday. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.